Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Daniel C. Clark. He's a seasoned life coach. He from the Midwest USA. He's developed a unique system of transformation that teaches clients to pivot and change their life. He runs the Daniel C. Clark Coaching. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You are welcome to the show, Daniel. You are welcome to India in this online form. And
Yeah.
I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about the process of transformation. So, is transformation such a big word? We'll come to that, or is it a gradual process? But first, let the audience understand more about Daniel Clark. Who is Daniel Clark beyond being a life coach, and how did let them understand a bit of your background? Was he always into this? And a bit more will help them understand who they are listening to.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. It's what's interesting is that we all have a story somewhere and we get started. So I began to do, I worked in a hospital setting in 2005, started my own private practice in 2012. And along the journey, I had heart surgery. My dad died, and I recognized that I was very unhappy and started trying to figure life out. And at some point, I got to the place where I just knew that I wasn't doing well. So I started my own journey in trying to figure out how I wanted to be different and who I really was. And that transformed into what I'm actually doing for a living now. And I have experienced personally the things that I teach others and how to become or transform from what they've experienced in the past to be the person that they want to be.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that, Daniel. Now, coming to the transformation part, the process of transformation. When we talk of transformation, it almost the image that comes into our is overall overhauling of your whole being. Now, that can sometimes, mean a bit more difficult for things, a lot of changes involved. So, help us understand about what transformation is all about. How should people understand transformation for themselves? They keep on hearing, I also know, but if I were to ask, if you were to ask me to go transform myself, I would wonder into what. And so I want to understand this whole transformation word itself. What is this transformation? Is it a small thing? Is it a big thing?
That's a great question. All of us have behaviors and ways of behaving that where we aren't our best self. We edit and we hold back and we don't take risks. And if I'm talking about transformation of someone, what really happens is they show up in my world wanting to be different because they don't like how life is going for them, but they don't know what it is that's holding them back. And we would call those emotional blocks. And the process of really, truly transformation is recognizing that inside me, I want more than what I'm experiencing in my life. And I just don't know how to get past the things that I'm experiencing because I'm stuck in some particular area.
Right. So emotional blocks are the main thing that needs to be tackled. What are these emotional blocks and who puts these blocks? Obviously, they are not some, heart blockage that a doctor can do it, but you are a life coach. Maybe you will be able to do it. So how do I recognize that I have got some emotional block or not? Because there are so many things in our lives that keep on going on. How do I differentiate whether those are day-to-day things or they are actually emotional blocks which are holding me back from being the best version of myself?
Well, great question again, because what we're talking about is self-editing. What that means is that I hold myself back, or I don't ask for that raise, or I don't want to ask that person to be in a relationship with me, or I don't start that business, or I don't really do the things that I want to do because something's holding me back. And that what's holding me back is the emotions on the inside of me. And where we usually start is understanding that there's 5 basic emotions. That's fear, hurt, anger, sad, and joy. Now there's 4 unpleasant emotions and 1 pleasant emotion. What that means is that our unpleasant emotions actually are more common than pleasant. And what most people do is they spend most of their adulthood trying to avoid unpleasant emotions. And when in reality, we actually are going to have more of them. So learning how to manage the unpleasant emotions is where we begin. And also understanding that those emotions that we're having are from our past experiences. Let me define emotions for you real quick. Emotions are the product of my past experiences. There's no emotion in the present moment because there's nothing here. So in order for me to have an emotion, I have a past experience that my brain is actually projecting onto the current moment, which creates the emotion. So the emotions that I have are really my old self showing up.
Right, right. So you talked about emotions. People avoid emotions that can lead to, them thinking beyond what their life is at the moment. Now, isn't it a normal thing that we avoid emotions that can bring bad things in our mind, bad memories in our mind? We are programmed that way. You see, for many of us, emotions are almost like danger. And from time immemorial, we have been programmed to avoid danger or to run away from danger. Not always we got to fight with danger until unless it is at most necessary. How do you think this part of the mind, when we look at these emotions as danger, people who have hurt us, we don't want to get hurt again. People who are emotional blackmailers, they can blackmail you to any extent. You may think you are very strong, but as soon as they come within your purview, within your defenses, you are defenseless. How should
Mhm.
one look at that? That part of emotions, when your system considers those emotions a danger, and that is what. So how do I move beyond that? Should I fight them back, or I should be in safety?
Well, that's a great question. And I mean, you're actually explaining it very well because our emotions are so powerful that we don't want to experience that again. And that's what we call self-editing or wanting to avoid negative emotions. What you heard me say earlier is that there's more negative emotions rather than there are positive. And here's how this works. Most of us experience life from the ages of 0 to 7 in a system where we learn what's good and bad, right or wrong. And what happens is our brain integrates those experiences so that at 30, those things have a lot of power over us because what we don't know about us actually creates the emotion on the inside of us. Another way to think about it is that when you are experiencing an emotion in the moment and you react to it, that's called regression, which means you're going back to something you haven't solved in the past. Now, here's the fascinating part about this. We don't have to talk about our past to get that to go away. We just need to be aware of that it's not working for us right now. But here's another fascinating part of this, and most people miss this process of transformation. It's called yearnings. All of us yearn to be seen, to be heard, to feel important, to be known and understood, which leads to feeling loved and cared for. Yearnings, this desire to connect with someone, if it doesn't happen when we're growing up as a small child, then what happens is that we yearn for that as an adult. And so the emotional blocks that we have is if we don't get it as a child, we're not going to get it as an adult. And so we've learned that either we give up or we have to take it or we're afraid. And so again, as you mentioned earlier, if we are afraid, we actually will behave in a way that kind of we stay away from people who might be harming us. However, there's the difference between real harm and imaginary harm. And that's where we have to make the difference between what emotions really are, because most of it is imaginary.
Right, right. So, Daniel, how does one get started with this sort of, process?
Yeah,
Help us
great question again.
understand that. Yes.
Well,
How do you? Because as they say, the first step is the most difficult one.
right. So it's an awareness first. So what I do is I take people through a process of recognizing that when they were growing up, and this is a very simple process, that they did things that they loved when they were growing up because we all play. We color, we play with dolls or toys, or we play with dump trucks, or we play baseball. We do things as little kids before the age of 7. We do all kinds of toys and things like that. And children are innocent between the ages of 0 and 7, super, super innocent. And what we do is we begin to help them go back into some of those recesses of their childhood and do some of these fun things like just play and kind of reintegrate what it's like to be an innocent child, because we are all 4 or 5 or 6 years old on the inside of us. The experiences that are later in life, what we do is we integrate those as real, who we really are, when in truth, we're actually this young child. Because as our brain matures, it makes decisions about how we're going to be. 95% of all of our behavior is unconscious. That means that, if you're driving your car, you don't know you're driving your car, it's automatic. And so since your brain puts everything on automatic, we start focusing on what your emotions are doing on the inside of you. And we pay attention specifically to feeling those 5 emotions I mentioned earlier. And we would do that like a lot. Like every hour, you would try to notice whether you were afraid or feel angry or hurt or sad or joy, because our emotions are stored in our body, and we teach how to become very aware of what my body is doing so that I can become aware of what I'm actually feeling on the inside of me.
Right, right, Daniel. Now, in terms of, let me understand it like this for the audience. What do your clients generally come to you for? What is it that they seek for themselves in terms of transformation?
Again, great question. Everyone has a crisis somewhere in their life. There's things that just aren't going well. A failed business, a failed relationship, just very unhappy, sad, depressed. It doesn't really matter what it is. They typically show up in my world when life is really hard. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a life crisis as much as it is that they are just really, really unhappy and can't seem to make things work for them. And that's the stage when they are most susceptible to transformation. But here's the downside. We don't have to wait for crisis. We just have to recognize that if life isn't going the way that you want it to, you can actually learn how to be the person that you want to be by recognizing that you were formed by emotions and influenced by emotions that were given to you by the people that raised you. And learning how to separate yourself from that is very powerful.
Right, right. In today's time, Daniel, are emotions good or are emotions not good? Several times people, in school I read this book, and there one lawyer, it was the book, I guess, was The Winslow Boy. In that, one character asks the lawyer and says, why are you so ashamed of your emotions? And the lawyer says, because emotions muddy the issue. Clear, cold logic and buckets of it should be the lawyer's only equipment. That's what I remember. Nowadays, people talk of emotions, but many a times they don't follow it because they think, again, even in today's time, emotions, because people will blackmail you emotionally, they will make use of you and throw you. So that is why I asked, are emotions good or bad in today's time? How do you take care of your emotions? How do you protect yourself from that point of view? Because that is where, and this is not about transformation, this is about just pure emotions. How do you deal with this?
Oh my gosh, great question again, because what you're telling me is that you've had experiences where you have to protect yourself from what's happening, and so you don't know what to do. But if you think about it from a different perspective, our emotions are wisdom. That means that when an emotion shows up, it gives us an indication of what's happening around us. And so you're right, we do need to protect ourselves from our emotions. I mean, from the emotions that are coming toward us. Because when we feel afraid, there's a reason why we're afraid, right? But what you're also talking about is protecting yourself from the results of someone else actually influencing you at some point because they're doing something that you don't want. And that's really what emotions are about. But emotions are neither good nor bad. They're actually wisdom that is natural inside our bodies to inform us whether things are going well or whether things are not going well. We just have a tendency to think that the unpleasant emotions are negative and they're wrong, but no, they are very informative because they help us understand that things are not going the way we want them to.
Right, right, Daniel. So that brings me to this word called social emotional intelligence. You specialize in that. How do I be taking care of my own emotions, but at the same time, I still have that social emotional intelligence because man is a social animal. I need to socialize. So, how do I bring this social emotional intelligence into my life without coming into harm? What does this social emotional intelligence mean actually for you? And how do you bring that to your clients?
Well, I believe that social emotional intelligence simply means that I'm aware of what the emotions are that are going on inside you and what's going on inside of me. That means I'm actually present with you and I can experience what you're thinking or feeling anyway. And since that's true, I know how to actually be in resonance with you, which means I can kind of vibrate with you and understand what's happening inside you. And so that way, since that's true, I can have wisdom about what I want to do. But if I'm afraid or angry, then I lose all my ability to have wisdom because I'm being influenced by my past. So emotional intelligence means that I'm managing my emotions by not letting them take over and creating inside me the drama or the turmoil so that I'm not doing the things that I want to do. Because when I'm not emotionally intelligent, I'm actually behaving in ways that aren't what's best for me.
Right, right. So, is this emotional, social emotional intelligence that marketers, the market, the industry, the politicians misuse and push their products or services or ideas into you? Because when you are more accepting in at accepting stage, you are also vulnerable. That is one big danger that happens in today's time. How do you deal with that? Because that is a big danger in today's time, or is it not? Maybe my understanding is not fully correct.
No, you're absolutely right, and you're right. So we in advertising and marketing and in our social realm and in political realm, there's so many influences that influence our emotions because they make us believe that there's something that we want that is outside of ourselves. And so that means that we're going to get, I don't know, the politician is going to survive. I mean, going to save us from all this terrible stuff that's happening, or this thing that I'm going to buy or drink or eat is actually going to make me feel like I'm a beautiful person or I'm doing really great. When in reality, again, all those things are outside of ourselves. That's why when you notice that you are feeling afraid or when you're feeling hurt is by the relationship that's not working. If you can notice the emotions that are happening around you, you're less likely to want to have something outside yourself to make yourself happy or have joy than something on the inside. So that's why it's real important to recognize what your emotions are doing. For example, if you see someone talking about something and they're giving you a promise that if you do this for them or with them, you'll be so happy and you'll have life the way that you want it to, that's actually you recognizing that that can't be true because you know that your emotions come from inside you instead of from outside of you. That's why we have to pay attention to what I'm feeling. Because if I'm feeling that that's going to make me happy, that's not true. And once we learn that those things outside ourselves don't make us happy, we learn how to manage our emotions in a completely different way. And that's where our wisdom comes from.
Right. So, to understand it, what are the major challenges towards this whole process of transformation? What is it that can stop me as soon as I begin?
Wow. Again, great question. Biases, a predetermined judgment about things like people are good or bad, or this is wrong or this is right. So those biases and those judgments and unforgiveness is the most difficult thing to work with. If you don't have that in a understanding, then it's really hard to go forward.
Right, right. So there is much to understand, learn from you, Daniel, about all these things. And this is such a lot of things that can not be fully understood in one episode. There, for that, people will have to understand more about you, from you, and directly come to you. So, what is the best way for people to connect with you, learn more about you, and also if they want to engage with you as a life coach?
I would love that. My website is Transformed Life. That's EDTRANSFORMED life.net. And you can there's a couple of links there. You can connect with me directly. And I'd love to talk with you. And almost everything that you need to know about me is right there.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for being with me.